Alright class, this week we're doing chapters 11 and 12 on physical, cognitive, social, and personality development in adolescence. So this is going to be our 12 to 18-year-olds or 12 to 20-year-olds, really depends on who you ask. So historically it's been 12 to 18, but then we called adulthood, or early adulthood, 20 to 40, so it's like, well, what happened between 18 and 20? I'm not going to ask you a question of when exactly does adolescence end. It ends when it ends, so when we get to our adulthood chapters, we'll talk about how between 18 and 22 or so, you're kind of going going through what we call emerging adulthood. So adolescence is when you hit puberty until 18 to 22-ish, we'll say. Alright, so hormonal changes in puberty are obviously going to start happening as we start to become our adult selves. Growth hormone increases around 8 to 9, which we learned about in the last couple of chapters. So we are going to see that kind of growth spurt happening with boys and girls. Girls are going to start to produce more estrogens, and boys are going to start to produce more androgens, which is going to start feminizing and masculinizing their bodies. So the body growth differences between males and females, it's a pretty big one now that we're going to start to see in adolescence. So for boys, their growth spurt is going to start around age 12 and a half-ish, but for girls it's going to start around age 10, because remember, girls aren't going to grow for as long as boys are. For boys, their shoulders are going to broaden, their waists are going to get smaller, and their legs are going to get longer. So they're going to be like an upside-down triangle, kind of. And for girls, their hips broaden. Yay, being female. Obviously, this is due to girls needing to have broader hips to be able to make babies and push those things out. So the muscle to fat makeup, boys, as they move through adolescence, are going to gain more muscle and more aerobic efficiency, and girls are going to gain more fat. Another just super benefit of being female. Now, again, this is just a biological difference between males and females. Males are hunters and gatherers, right? They need their muscle to go out there and run around and kill a wild beast and bring it back with a pile of nuts. And the girls need fat to make babies. That's pretty much what it is. The fat on our bodies helps us to sustain pregnancies. This is also why girls who weigh more tend to go through puberty earlier than girls who weigh less, which we'll talk about in a little bit. Alright, so as we move through sexual maturation, we're going to develop primary and secondary sexual characteristics. Primary sexual characteristics are the things that are absolutely needed to make a baby. So what do we absolutely need to make a baby? We need an egg and we need some sperm. So girls need to be able to produce eggs, and when girls begin producing eggs in their ovaries, it is called menarche. And boys need to be able to produce sperm, so when boys start producing sperm in their testes, it's called spermarchy, which is a fun word to say. Spermarchy. Try it. So secondary sexual characteristics are all the other changes that happen when we go through puberty that aren't necessarily needed in order to make a baby, right? We need a sperm and an egg, absolutely. And these are kind of all the other things that happen. So girls are going to start to grow breasts. Boys are going to start to grow facial hair. They're going to start to have their voice changing. Everyone's going to start getting underarm hair, pubic hair, these different things that say, hey, look at me, I'm going through puberty. I'm an adolescent. Right? My daughter was really freaked out this year in 6th grade by so many of the boys having their little squeaky voices that go up and down, like, hey, how are you doing today? Because they're going through their vocal change. Right, and that's right about on time. Around 11 to 12 years old is when we start to see boys having this happen, and girls starting to develop breasts, if not earlier. Alright, so the individual differences we see, because not everyone goes through puberty at the same time, there's a lot of stuff that goes into this. Number one's going to be heredity. The age at which your same-sex parent went through puberty is when you are likely to go through puberty. So females should look at their moms and males should look at their dads. Alright, that's going to be like the number one predictor of when you'll go through puberty is when your same-sex parent went through it. The next really good predictor is nutrition, exercise, and body fat for girls. So almost all of the rest of this just has to do pretty much specifically with females. So for girls, the more body fat they have on their body, the earlier they go through puberty and reach menarche and start having their period. Because from a completely biological standpoint, what your body is saying is, do you have enough reserves on your body to sustain a pregnancy? And if you have enough body fat, then your brain says, okay, you can, you would be able to sustain a pregnancy if you were to get pregnant. Let's get you going. All right. Because now girls who don't have like hardly any body fat, very, very low body mass index, they don't tend to go through puberty until much later on. You only really see this in girls who have like severe eating disorders, or girls who are also like really hardcore athletes that have a lot of muscle, because muscle burns fat, right? So girls with a lot of muscle tone tend to also not go through puberty until a little bit later on. So maybe like 15, 16, or even 17 before they actually get their period, because their body is saying, well, there's not enough fat here. Right? The tubby girls know where the food is. They'll be able to get food if they're pregnant, and if there is some sort of famine, they know, they'll be able to survive, right? You'll be able to keep the species going. So geographical location wise, there's some studies that say that like if you live closer to the equator, you go through puberty earlier. If you live in America, you're more likely, United States of America, you're more likely to go through puberty earlier, but that has a lot to do with our girls in America being more likely to be overweight. Kind of all of this plays into that. So socioeconomic status and ethnic group, people who are of a minority ethnic group are more likely to be in a lower socioeconomic status. Both of these things put you at risk for being overweight. And overweight girls are more likely to go through puberty earlier, just kind of across the board. So that kind of ticks those two ones. Early family experiences, girls who don't live with their father or who live with a stepfather tend to go through puberty earlier than girls who live with their biological father, which is, kind of weird. All kinds of weird stuff happens to your body biologically when you have a stepdad or your real dad or no dad around. And again, it's just kind of nature's way of saying, let's not make babies with someone we're related to. And it's horrible and disgusting to think about, but from a completely like nature, keep the species going perspective, we do see this, that if there's a stepdad instead of a biological dad, the girl gets her period earlier than if she's living it with her biological father. And these things kind of go in cycles. As girls have gotten healthier and we've been able to live longer, the healthier you are, the earlier you'll start puberty. If you're really unhealthy, your body tends to not push you through puberty. So, as we've developed, better medication and, better nutrients, we see girls, level for puberty for girls going lower, or age, sorry. Alright, so our adolescent brain development, pruning is going to continue. Remember, pruning is getting rid of redundant neurological pathways, different synaptic pathways, so that our brain becomes more efficient. So we're going to keep pruning, making the brain more and more efficient as we move through our adolescent years. A lot of it's going to be happening in the frontal lobes. Remember, those are going to be the last ones that are going to develop fully, so going to take them a while still. Growth and myelination are going to start to speed up. So we're actually going to start to be making a lot more synaptic connections, and we're going to start myelinating a lot faster, and again, a lot in the frontal lobes. And it's going to help strengthen the connection between the different parts of the brain. So things like the corpus callosum and having like the limbic system, reacting to things that are happening in the cerebral cortex for like memory and retention and focus, things that are coming from maybe the reticular formation. Like all these things are able to work a little bit better as we start to strengthen those connections. That has a lot to do with the myelination that's happening. So we're going to be better at paying attention. We're going to have our planning skills are going to be getting better. Again, they're not going to be great, because that's one of the last things to really solidify in the frontal lobe. You're going to be able to integrate information better. So take the information and think about it, see how it relates to other things. You know, how does this relate to this? What do I think? And it also is going to help us with self-regulation, being able to calm ourselves down a little bit better, understand our emotions a little bit more. Yes, they're going to have mood swings, and we will talk about that, but they understand kind of their emotions a little bit better at this age. We also see neurotransmitter response changing. And so what does that mean is that, you have excitatory neurotransmitters and you have inhibitory neurotransmitters, right? The inhibitory ones kind of calm everything down, and the excitatory ones kind of speed stuff up. So in adolescence, the adolescent brain is kind of chemically different than a child's brain or an adult brain, due to the fact that it becomes more sensitive to excitatory messages. So what does this do? Well, it intensifies their reactions, right? So stress is way big, right? Everything's a huge deal. But also pleasure and new things, right? They love something new and stupid. You're like, why is this so exciting to you? This is dumb. They're, oh, this is the greatest thing ever. And it's because of those excitatory things. Their dopamine is firing, and they got serotonin going on, and epinephrine and norepinephrine, right? All this good stuff's kind of firing around, and these excitatory messages are just kind of bigger in their brain, which can be big for the good, but it also can be big like for bad, right? It's like stress and trauma and drama, and all of that is also much bigger in the adolescent brain. It's another one of the reasons why when parents get divorced, the adolescent has a tougher time with it. All right, so our sleep habits at this age, they still need about as much sleep as littler kids, but most of them do not get it. Adolescents kind of across the board, especially in America, do not get enough sleep. And that lack of sleep is going to impair their ability to function cognitively well. So teenagers that don't get enough sleep are going to show lower achievement in school and in extracurriculars. They're going to be moodier than they already would be. And they're going to show more high-risk behaviors like sexual activity, drinking, drugs, driving their cars too fast, things like that. So we really want them to be getting a good 10 hours of sleep per night, but almost no adolescents do this. Their brain kind of switches over to this very different sleeping pattern in adolescence. So the adolescent brain tends to want to stay up later, but also get up later. Right? Like all adolescents kind of switch over to this routine where they would rather stay up till, midnight and get up around, 9 or 10 in the morning, and then they function fine. So a lot of high schools have changed their starting times to adapt to this. Because when you have students come in and start school at like 9:30 in the morning instead of, 8 a.m., you find that it increases grades, it increases retention, they're, more attentive in class because their brain just kind of works better staying in, coming into school later and staying later in the afternoon than going in too early.